Welcome back to the Refined Strength podcast. We took a little bit of a break, and that was honestly because I had a move. I had Austin's show, also the Texas Classic and Texas Pro, which I sponsored as part of Refined Strength. I sponsored the Pro Figure division. And it's just kind of been a whirlwind, honestly, of just like being busy and doing too much, but at the same time, not too much, because it's all things that I asked for. It's all things that I've been working towards and being and like giving to myself. So I can't really say it was too much because I wanted all of it. And right now, while I would not, it's not that I'd much rather not be doing this, but part of me and the perfectionist in me wants to only do a podcast when I have like all of my things settled. And right now, that's just not the case. I have this big room as an office, and I have my desk set up. I have my chair that's normally my podcast chair or my reading nook chair, and it's nothing set up. Everything else in the house is pretty much set up, which is really nice. Austin's office is coming along too. So we've been in here about 2 weeks, and we're just working on getting everything together. So it has been a whirlwind, but I wanted to do a Q&A and kind of a catch-up vlog style podcast. I'm here at my desk. This is something weird my hair is doing lately, where it's kind of curly but kind of not, so we're just going with it. I got a lot of good questions, some more on the personal side, me as an athlete, some more as me as a coach. So I'm just kind of going back and forth with a lot of them. So keep up if you want, but there's a lot of good nuggets in here, I think, for athletes, but also for people who are just who are coaching maybe in the beginnings of their coaching, and maybe it's still side hustle style. So I think some of these insights might be helpful to someone like that. So just to kind of put that out there, if you're not interested in any of that, you don't have to listen, but lots of good stuff in here. So going to some of the first questions that came through on Instagram. First one from my girl, Clarissa Fortune. She asked me when the tiramisu latte is coming. So I did tell her that I would make a reel making a tiramisu latte, because she and I have a shared love for tiramisu. And I literally bought ricotta cheese so that I could make this. And then I tried making it, and my frother thing just didn't work. It like crapped out. So now I haven't had the frother for like a month, and my ricotta cheese went bad. So I'm gonna make tiramisu latte. Let you just wait. I just need some time. So anyway, some other questions. So this was a good question that's more along the side of coaching. There's a couple questions that are like follow-up. So one being, is there ever a time that I turn clients away? And I'm guessing this means like a prospective client who wants to work with me. And I wouldn't say there's been many instances where I've actually been like, hey girl, or hey man, this isn't going to work. I don't think I'm the right coach for you. There's maybe been like a handful, like I could count on like one or two hands the times in my whole coaching career that I've done that. And, when I was with my former company, I would sometimes, if that happened, I would let them know that they might be better fit for a different coach on the team, because we had a lot of coaches on the team. But now owning my own business and just also being more solid and aligned in my own business, because that's what I get to do as a business owner. And also at the level I'm at just as a coach, I get to be more selective with who I think would be a good fit for me as a coach and as an athlete for me as a coach, because I am not for everybody. And the way that I coach and the way that I program is not going to be for everybody, not only like their personality, their maturity level as an athlete. And so anyway, when I do feel someone is not a good fit for me as an athlete, I will typically ask some more questions and see if they might be a better fit for one of my other coaches that I have working with me, which are Jessica Best and Daraja Weidemoyer. So they are both extremely wonderful coaches, very skilled, very educated, and we all share the same values. So we do coach similarly, but there are differences in us, obviously. So I do typically, if I don't think someone would be a good fit for me for whatever reason, I might put them with Jess or Daraja. If for some reason they also are not a good fit for that person, it's usually because they are just not serious enough and not ready for a coach to give them the accountability that they need in order to reach the goal that they have. Most of the time, when someone's not a good fit, whether I find out before they sign up or after, it's because they are rushing the process and they are not ready to be told, hey, this is going to take a while. So long answer to that is like, yes, I do turn some people away, but not in a like, hey, this isn't going to work for you. Let's just end the call here. I've never had to do that, really. I've only just told someone, this might not be the thing that you're ready for right now, but whenever you are ready to let go of your assumptions and whatever is holding you back from being able to follow a coach's program, I let them know, I'm here for you whenever you're ready, as are my coaches. And usually what happens with that is I'm telling the person basically what they don't want to hear as an athlete. That's it's going to take longer, or you need to build first, or you need to work on your health first, or something like that. They end up coming back several months later or even a year later. I've had people come to me that they talked to me years ago and they want to work with me or one of the coaches because they realized that they tried it their way, didn't work, so they're going to start doing it our way. And the follow-up question was, what would it take to fire a client, or would you try and work through issues? So I'm always going to try to work through issues. Usually the issues are the same thing as I just mentioned. The issues are about them not quite seeing the vision that the coach sees. So if I see the vision, someone wants to step on stage, they say, I want to get a pro card, I want to do whatever it takes. But they're not actually willing to do whatever it takes because they're only looking at the prep, or they want to do an enhanced growth phase, but they don't want to focus on their health, or they don't want to pay for blood work or something like that. Those are some issues that I see sometimes that ends up making me, instead of want to fire a client, because I don't really want to fire a client, it's it's an opportunity for me to think about how can I get through to this client in a way that makes sense to them. So it's asking more questions. So with asking more self-discovery questions, helping them get to where I'm at on their own, or with a little help, instead of just telling them what it is they have to do. Because I'm just not a my way or the highway person. I want them to understand why it is I want them to do the thing I want them to do. Another common issue would be, someone is having trouble sticking to their plan, or having trouble with data collection or accountability, or, maybe 4 or 5 days out of the week, they're really good and they're on point, but then they fall off on the weekends. And if they're not following the plan, but at the same time complaining about the results that they're not getting, that's a problem. That is a clear misalignment of not necessarily the coach and athlete, but they're letting their temporary and immediate desires supersede their long-term desires and goals. So sometimes that's a matter of just they just need to figure it out, and they need to go through a lot more mindset work and just mentorship as a person, growth as a person. And usually I can figure that out and I can get them there. But sometimes people just need some time away from coaching and they need some time to figure it out themselves. So yeah, but the only time I've ever told someone, hey, I think you need a break from coaching, is if it's been months or longer of them just kind of being misaligned in that way. So another question is a good one. It's one that's been very top of mind for me, which is, why do we put unnecessary pressure on ourselves? And I think for this one, it's something I've been reflecting a lot on lately, because there's been a lot of thoughts circulating in my mind about being not enough, or fearing that I'm not enough. But if I look at, and the reason we do that, the reason we, especially as athletes, as high achievers, business owners, whatever it is, we want to feel like enough because we are thinking that enough means us at this max capacity level, which means we are firing on all cylinders. We're doing everything we say we're going to do. We're getting everything on our list done, and we're winning everything. We're executing at this high level. That's this max capacity. But that's not really what max capacity is. Max capacity for anybody is going to be a moving target. It's going to be, some days it's going to look like getting all of your things done, checking off all your boxes. It's going to be just fucking nailing it and executing. And then sometimes It's like max capacity is a little bit lower than that, because if you wake up in the morning and you're under recovered, or you are going through something in your personal life, or if something happened recently, or you just got more work put on you than you expected, your max capacity might look different. It might look like getting 80% of your work done and leaving the other work for the next day, because that's all you can do. That's all you can handle at a time. Maybe I'm a little longer with my responses and I dig a little deeper. And then sometimes I don't have the capacity to do that. So I do not the bare minimum, but I might send like a voice memo instead of a video, because it's just a little bit lower capacity necessary. And then sometimes I'm typing out responses, because like my voice is text and I can't necessarily give as much as I normally do. Those times are fewer and farther between, but they do happen. I also usually leave Fridays as a day where I can either take the day off if I feel like I need it, or if I feel like burnt out or just overwhelmed by work and I want to take a pause, or I will use that day to work on admin stuff and podcast and whatever I want. And then it's also a day where if I need to travel, I can do that. So max capacity changes, and I think we need to understand that. We also need to understand that what we consume outside of ourselves is part of what makes us put that pressure on ourselves. So if I see a coach who I look up to, or a business owner that I look up to, and I see all of their wins, I'm immediately looking at, like, it's easy for us to see that and be like, well, I ain't shit. I'm not doing that. I'm not there yet. My athlete doesn't look as good, or I'm not as smart as them. I'm not putting out the content like they are, or whatever. You instantly compare yourself to them, because that's what our mind automatically does. Is like, if I'm someone who coaches and I put out content and I put out energy and I showcase my athletes, I'm going to look at someone else doing the same thing. And it's so easy to compare those two, like compare my athlete to their athlete, or compare like what they said to what I said, and even if it's a friend of mine. So I think we put that pressure on ourselves too, because of how easy it is to compare ourselves to others, because of how we're all doing the same shit. The education out there is all the same. For the most part, it's just said in different ways slightly, it's showcased differently, because we're all unique, but we're also all the same. So I think it's because we compare ourselves too easily, and we're not able to be as neutral about what we see. So over the years, I've gotten a lot better at being neutral about like my own body as an athlete. So because of that, I can look at myself and I can look at another figure pro and be like, she looks great. I look great too. I'm on my own journey. I don't need to look like her. Whereas in the past, I used to only see people who were also figure pros who all looked better than me. And that took, in my mind, that took away from how I look. And I wasn't there yet, so therefore I wasn't good enough yet, or I couldn't see myself as good enough, and I couldn't be confident in myself. And that fucked with me a lot. I'm over that point in my life now, and now I can be a lot more neutral about my body in any phase that it's in. But there's also going to be, I've currently or recently been struggling more with doing the same thing with like other coaches or other business owners, because I got past that part of that comparison with me as an athlete. I am now working through doing that with me as a business owner and me as a coach. So it's just going to take time, and it takes multiple moments of just like reminding myself of that. So I think if anyone listening is thinking about that, just like I put so much pressure on myself, you got to remind yourself that like you have all the time in the world to do whatever you want to do. People get started in coaching from, the moment they step off their first show stage to like after 10 plus years of working a corporate job and coaching on the side. Everyone's different. And so you can't compare yourself to others. You just have to focus on like, how can I do better? And better doesn't have to happen right now. Better has to start right now if you want to be better, but it doesn't have to like be completed right now. Better is a journey. It's not something that is always just the destination. It's something that we have time and we have the resources and the ability to make it happen at our own pace. And if you ever feel like you're not going fast enough, look back over the last year or 2 years and look at where you were and how you were thinking back then and compare it to how you look right now and what you're doing right now and the moves you're making and the type of clients that you have and the type of feedback you get from clients, friends, social media, whatever, you've probably improved. So if you've improved, that means that you're going to keep improving as long as you just keep showing up. All right. Another question that I think was a little bit similar or related. So when you left your corporate job, did you go coaching full time? Or when you left your corporate job to go coaching full time, did you have financial stability at the time, or did you take a risk with no regrets? So a little bit of both, honestly. And I think you do have to have both, as if you want to not crash and burn. So my story was that, kind of going a little bit further back without going too much into it, but I was a personal trainer from about 2013 through 2015. I started school, or I started training and like really working out in 2012. And then I started school in 2013. I got my CPT pretty quickly. I started teaching classes, training in gyms. And by 2015, I was just like kind of burnt out on training. I realized I don't like this as much as I thought I would. And I had just like gone to school. I finished my degree, my 2-year degree in like 1.5 years. I did way too many classes at once. And I was training and I hated the sales aspect. I really didn't like having to sell to people on the floor. I worked at a Gold's at the time. So I, at the time, was just like, I'm also not making any money. I was barely getting by. I didn't have health insurance. It was just kind of a mess. So I transitioned into the corporate side of fitness and I started working for a Gold's Gym owner. And I worked for him as his executive assistant and personal assistant for about 3 years. I did a lot of operational and management work, project management. I learned a lot in that time. And it gave me the time to build the confidence in a lot of my like harder skills. And it also gave me the time and resources to become a better competitor, because I started competing that same year that I left training and went into corporate. So I got my pro card in that time. I competed. I like learned a lot about myself. And then I left the gym job and went into corporate world as in property management. And so that was when I took some time and I thought I was going to be a real estate agent. I got my license and then I worked as an EA for a large multifamily property management firm. So I worked there for another like 2.5, 3 years. And during that time was when I started coaching online. And I didn't advertise it. I just kind of kept a few clients that would like come to me, like coworkers or friends, and I would just coach them online. And I would give them macros and teach them about macros, give them a workout plan and have them check in. And I left and went on my own, moved into a place on my own, and just really realized like, well, I could do anything I want. And I reached out to my coach at the time, who was Paul, and he had Pro Physique. And so I asked him, what would it take for me to join Pro Physique as a coach? So he told me. I got an extra certification. I worked on that throughout 2020. And then I started like January 2021. I was still working the corporate job in property management. So I was making a salary. I think I was making like $68,000 a year at the time. And I had a full benefits package. Everything was super cush at that job, with like for me at that time. And I had bonuses. I had a great work culture, but I just was not any more interested in being an EA, because I had been that for basically 6 years, if not a little longer. And I realized I don't want to work for someone, and I don't want to be a lifetime executive assistant. I don't want to manage other assistants. I don't want to be in an industry that I'm not passionate about. And I, at the same time, was moving up in coaching really fast. And so from January to March, I had gained 40 clients, and I was at that 40 client mark. And it had moved really fast. I was working 7 days a week. I was working about 50 hours a week for my corporate job. And then I was working those 40 clients per week as well, or like 40 clients in general. So for about 2.5 years, 2.5, 3 years, I did side hustle style coaching, didn't advertise at all, just kind of got practice, put a couple people on stage, but I was really quiet about it. And started coaching full time. And I quit my corporate job about 3.5 to 4 months after I started at Pro Physique. So they obviously gave me a lot of leads. So that was a really big part of me moving up really quickly. So I did have financial stability because I had a full-time salaried job, and I was able to build up pretty quickly, being that I was being given leads by a company that had a lot of lead flow. So I had the financial stability, but it was still a risk. In hindsight, I probably should have like stayed a little longer and just like made some more money before I left, but it all worked out, so I don't really have any regrets. If anyone listening is thinking about quitting their job and going to full-time coaching, I would at least be coaching like for at least a year before you decide to quit your job and coach. It's not like you need 40 clients to make that happen, but you will reach a point where your coaching and like your corporate job or whatever your job is will kind of like be butting heads. And so that's the point where you have to decide, all right, am I ready to hustle once I stop this, once I quit my job? Because that hustle is hard and it is not what most people think it is. If you think that coaching is this like really cush, easy job where you just get to like have your own schedule and coach and like travel all the time, like it could be, but you have to work really fucking hard to get there. And so like, for example, I'm taking my first actual vacation since 2018 this year. I've done a lot of like little weekend trips, things like that, but I've never taken like a full vacation while coaching. That is my story. So if you have your own, obviously like go with what makes sense for you, but everyone's going to be different and it is a lot harder than it looks, but it is very gratifying and I'm really happy that my journey went the way it did. All right. Other question. What has been your greatest accomplishment over the last 2 to 3 years? Honestly, the last 2 to 3 years have been the greatest growth years of my life. Almost exactly 2 years ago, I started Refined Strength. So I officially started that like and went public with it in October of 2023. And right now it is August 2025. I had been slowly working on Refined Strength from about like April, May of 2023, and then fully went forward with it in October. I just been kind of like working on setting up the business and still working at my last company, and then I fully just transferred everyone over in 2023. So that would probably be the biggest accomplishment, is starting Refined Strength. And then the next biggest has been just watching it grow and seeing the growth that it took from getting started with it and having all my clients come with me, having the response that it did, also having friends and colleagues see that and help them believe in themselves. That's part of that accomplishment, because I had a lot of friends, if you know, you know, also start their own thing or go off and do different things as a coach after that, like around that time and since then. And so I honestly love seeing my friends win. And I love knowing that so many people now, like I was a small part, if at all, of helping them believe in themselves so that they can go and coach on their own and be their own coaches and everything like that. So those are two major accomplishments, is like the start, but also like the growth of Refined Strength, like our retreat, having 2 coaches under me, having the podcast, having all of those things and how it all impacts everything around us. And then the third would be having such a successful prep my last season in 2023. It was kind of thought of as my like pro debut 2.0, because my last 2 seasons as a pro were with my former coach and they just did not go well. I got dead last in every single one of my shows with him as a pro. And working with Mark since the end of that 2021 season through now has been a huge accomplishment, because it helped me just like build what I needed to build, do what I need to do to be a successful pro. That was my only goal with him. It's like, I just don't want to get last. I want to be in the top 10 at a pro show. And that was my goal. So I knew that I wasn't ready to set the goal of becoming an Olympian, because I'd only ever gotten dead last. Like maybe I didn't have it, right? And so I told him, I want a top 10. That's it. And see where we go from there. And then I got a top 10, and then I got a top 3. And that top 3 was next to Jessica Reyes Padilla, second in the world, Masters Miss Olympia 2 years in a row, most pro wins as a pro, and just like such an incredible human. And so being third place next to her and then also Dee Jackson was the best moment of my life as an athlete. Absolutely. So those are the best accomplishments for sure. So yeah, it's been a good life, been a good time. There's a lot of coaching questions coming up soon, but I'm going to answer more personal questions continuing. What's the easiest and hardest part for you in prep/bodybuilding in general? Honestly, the easiest part is just like moving forward and allowing myself to learn, because I've gotten really good at that. I think losing so many times in a row helped me be much more adaptive, and just humble too. I think of myself as a pretty humble person, but I think for a while I was a little overly humble for myself, for my own accomplishments and for my own capabilities. And I stayed humble in order to not make it seem like I was overly confident, because I was really afraid of people thinking I was too confident because of how poorly I was doing as a pro. And then as I started to gain confidence and just like growing through my last off season from 2021 through 2024, before I started prep, that confidence in myself grew, and the confidence from my coach obviously helped too. So when I started that prep, I just had to just lock in to the confidence factor, and I had to decide, like, I'm going to do this. I am going to be a top 10 figure pro, and I am going to move forward after that goal. And so I think the easiest part has just been adapting, because of how hard it was first, and then how much I realized I needed to adapt in order to succeed. The hardest part, honestly, I don't really know. I think the hardest part is sometimes the mind games that it plays with us, and the dealing with other people's emotions too, because you can control your emotions if you really get to practice at it, which I think I've done a pretty good job at. But other people's emotions you can't control, and you can't control what other people do, what they think about you, what they think about themselves. You can just be the best you can be. But it can be frustrating with when the people around you, whether they're close people to you, friends, relationships, like partners, whatever, kids, or people on social media, you can't control any of that. So what you have to learn how to control is your reception to it and how you absorb it, because it's really easy to absorb someone else's negative energy and let that impact your energy and how you move and how you see yourself and how you see the world. And so that would be the hardest part, because in our minds, it's natural for us to want everyone to be like us. And while I'm really proud of myself and like my abilities to do what I'm doing in life as a bodybuilder, as a business owner, as a friend, as a person, I can't expect people to be like me. If I want someone to change, or if I believe in someone in order for them to change, like if I know they have potential to be this way for themselves and succeed because of this or whatever, then the only thing I can really do is just show my care for them, show my love, and support them in any way they need, and watch it unfold. I can't actually change anybody, and I don't really want to, but I do see people around me that I would love for them to like reach their version of like their highest level. But you're only going to do that if you want to. So that would probably be the hardest part, is just being able to let people go at their own pace. That has been hard for me. So, all right, next question. Okay. Also in prep, how do you decide if you need an extra rest day, like you might during a building season, or do you always do training days regardless during prep? So this is about autoregulation. And autoregulation is when you are so aware of your body and you know if you need a rest day or if you need to train, or if you have a training day scheduled, but if you wake up or if you get to the time where you would train and you feel like just trash and you don't think you can train, you have to decide, am I just being lazy? Am I just being a little bitch? Or do I really need this rest day because I'm going to have a way worse day if I train, or if I'm going to have a really stressful day if I train? So that's the question. And like for me in prep, I do pretty similarly to what I would do in an off season, which like if I know I need a rest day from training, I will take it. However, there's a certain point in prep where your fatigue just is your fatigue and there's no way to change it. If you wait an extra day to train, it's not really going to change much. And as you get really closer to a show, your coach is probably going to, and like, this is what I do, this is what my coach does, they're going to tell you, hey, I want you to take a rest day today or tomorrow or whatever. I want you to take it. I want you to make sure to train these days. Like myself, my coach, a lot of coaches I know will specify what training days they want based on refeeds and rest days or low days or peaking and things like that. So I think it's a little bit of both, like auto-regulate, but also be realistic about like one rest day probably won't give you what you think it will, like it does in an off season. So yeah. Okay. There's more like coaching specific questions, or no, one more personal question. What do you do to help yourself feel more feminine in your body? So this is a really good question for especially women in bodybuilding, but especially women in more muscular divisions like figure and women's physique, women's bodybuilding. Bikini and wellness and now fit model, they are the more feminine divisions simply because they have a bigger emphasis on glutes and shape like curves and stuff like that. Their posing is a lot more feminine because it accentuates the glutes. That's basically it. So what do? Is I wear things that fit my body, that feel good, that make me feel feminine. So maybe they accentuate some curves I have. Maybe they help me look like I have a smaller waist or something like that. So I do have implants. That has also helped my femininity and how I feel feminine. It doesn't mean that women without implants can't be feminine or feel feminine. I have a lot of friends who don't have implants or large breasts and they feel plenty feminine. It is partially what you do to your appearance and how you carry yourself and more of the physical and the external, but a lot of it is internal as well. It's about being in your feminine if you're into that. So that means like thinking about how you feel and how you move and how you give your energy to people. If you're always like really harsh, really direct, really just like more masculine characteristics of like very blunt and direct like that. It's not that a female can't be those things, but it is thought to be a more masculine type of communicating. Then working on your ability to be a little softer. You can still be strong, but at the same time soft and feminine. So things like asking for more help, that helps me feel like just more taken care of. If someone like Austin, if he is helping me do something that I would normally just like want to be independent and do on my own, if I feel burnt out, it's because I'm not asking for enough help. So that honestly is part of what makes me feel more feminine, is how I ask, how I communicate, and how I give my energy and things like that. So it's clothes, it's your energy, it's your thoughts, it's implants. So it's a few things, but yeah, hopefully that helps. All right. So the next question, what percentage of whole foods do you have in a typical day? What about during prep? So I eat mostly whole foods, and my main whole foods are things like fruit. And these are what I consider as whole foods, being that they are single ingredient and they are pretty much not processed. So fruit, cream of rice, honey, actual rice, vegetables, eggs, egg whites, beef, bison, chicken breast, shrimp, coconut water. Like those are all like whole foods, single ingredient. They're not anything else. I get the rice is a little processed, but it's rice. So those are like my main foods. And then the minimally processed or homemade would be a little bit next level, and that's like nut butters. I make all my own nut butter for the most part, or I buy natural. And I make my own nut butter by literally just processing nuts and adding honey. Sourdough, I make that with flour and water and salt. Ultra filtered skim milk, it's just milk, Fairlife, and then dried fruit, which is obviously partially processed. And then the processed things that I have, protein powder, other supplements, things like that. Turkey bacon, that's pretty processed, but I do buy like good and organic turkey bacon. And then cookies. I have cookies sometimes. Like I put some cookies on my cream of rice, and I had a cookie this morning with my coffee. That's pretty processed. So that's what I eat. That's about it. So, all right. Next question. I'm going to try to get through these. Do you have clients use yohimbine? So yohimbine is a supplement. It basically blocks alpha adrenergic receptors, which are abundant in your stubborn fat areas. So it helps with preventing them from shutting down your fat burning process. So I use this, yes, usually just during a prep. I have someone take it fasted, and like with fasted cardio. If they're not doing fasted cardio, I just don't have them take it at all because it's really not ideal not fasted because it can cause some nausea, and I just like don't want you to be nauseous. So I do use Yoga. I think it's a great supplement. Is it gonna make or break you? No, but it can really help. So I use it, and I can use it with both natural or enhanced. So because it's not on the WADA list. Anyway, next question. Do you take naps? No, not really. I've probably taken like 4 naps in the last 2 years. I can't fall asleep in the middle of the day. So the exception is if I'm on a plane, I will fall asleep on a plane, usually, especially if it's an early morning flight, but I wouldn't really call that a nap. So tips to shrink the waist after dealing with gut distension, the bikini competitor here. So if you're dealing with gut distension, you got to fix the gut distension first. You can't just like shrink the waist. So fixing gut distension, it means looking at whatever the root cause is, which is some sort of gut dysbiosis. It might be, something you're eating is causing bloating and it's as simple as cutting it out. Or it might be something bigger going on like SIBO or leaky gut or some sort of other dysbiosis. It could be a lot of things. So my first steps in that is like, let's look at food and maybe doing some sort of an elimination style diet where we take things out, we simplify things, we remove common gut irritants, so things that are commonly causing bloating or distension. A lot of cruciferous veggies do that. A lot of times some foods that are more just like gaseous, so like broccoli is a big culprit. Garlic and onion, also big culprits of that. So first, elimination diet and working on water intake and maybe bringing down or out of artificial sweeteners and carbonation. So those are the like easy things to do in the first, for a few weeks, maybe like anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks before you really figure out what might be causing the distension if it's something you're ingesting. The next step, if you're taking all of those things out and everything is good, would be to potentially get a GI map done, which is basically a stool sample test. And then that looks at everything that's in your gut. So it looks at things like if you have parasite, it shows your gut lining, like it shows a lot of different things, what different types of bacteria you have, or if you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, or if you have not enough good bacteria and your microbiome is just off balance. So it shows markers of inflammation, shows a lot of different things. So we would get that test done and then look at it and see what are the red flags that we want to address first, or maybe all at once, and use a multi-phased approach depending on what the approach needed is. But yeah, so it's not really a simple answer. A lot of times there's just something deeper going on that you need to figure out. Yeah. But other ways that are like more simple would be like probably just drinking more water and looking at your stress management too, because a lot of people have distension and bloat because they are stressed as fuck and they're always anxious, and that causes your body to lock up and not release as much as it needs to. So a lot of times it's that, and I've noticed that a lot in athletes. With wearable tech tracking everything but our coffee intake these days, what's the weirdest stat you've seen on your fitness tracker, and how do you use all that data without turning into a human spreadsheet? Honestly, I just don't look at it. I just don't look at things that I don't think pertain to me. So I have the Aura Ring. I love it. I use it mostly for my steps and then also to track my cycle, because I went off of hormonal birth control a couple years ago and I wanted a way to track my cycle so that I could track my ovulation and fertility and things like that, to use like natural cycle tracking as my birth control. So that's why I use Aura Ring. I look at HRV and I look at my sleep. I look at that data, but I don't stay married to it. If it tells me, hey, you're under recovered, you should take it easy today. If I feel great and if I want to work out, or if I need to work out because of my schedule, I will do what I need to do. I won't just listen to the ring and let it tell me to not do something, because the ring is not you. The ring is just a tool. So you can take or leave anything from the data that it gives you. So But the reason to look at certain data points is if something is a pattern or a trend and you see negative effects of that, like too much coffee drinking or something like that is affecting your sleep or whatever, then that's the time where maybe you should pay attention and you should start to work towards improving that by like reducing your caffeine intake, something like that. So I wouldn't say I have like the weirdest stat I've ever seen. There's all the stats and data that you might get from a fitness tracker, or if a coach is tracking stats, all of them could be really useful, but a lot of them might be more information than we need. So sometimes if I have a client who's like information overload and they have like too much data to track because my spreadsheet asks them too much, I will usually tell them like, all right, let's like bring it down to just like a few data points instead of all of these data points and see how that works for you. So that's my answer to that. How do you channel the emotional pain of rejection into motivation for your fitness goals? What mental health practice helps you turn setbacks into fuel for your workouts? That's a really cool question. So the pain of rejection is like the first part of that. So I had a lot of that pain of rejection when I was losing on stage, when I was not getting the outcome that I obviously wanted. But part of that was that I was going through these preps, that 2019 and 2021 was going through those preps, getting rejected over and over again and expecting different results because I was blind to the things that I was self-sabotaging. So there were moments where I didn't follow my diet as well. And because I had like an uncontrollable urge, right? So there were those moments, but there were also moments where I was perfect and I was still failing. So that was where I was like kind of self-sabotaging. Well, at least if I know I'm going to fail, I might as well fail on my own terms. So that's where self-sabotage comes from, because I know I'm going to get rejected. So I just like make it under my control more, which is obviously part of why I didn't do well. But another part was listening to the wrong person and trusting them when I say like, hey, I don't think I'm going to be ready for this show we have picked. And them saying like, no, it's going to work out. You're going to be ready. Trust me. And I trusted them for too long. So that was my learning of that like pain of rejection. Like it hurts to be on stage for call out after call out after call out, and then having to move around in the last call out, even though you know you're all getting 16th place. That hurt enough for me to finally decide. And honestly, like what really put it into perspective for me, which is crazy, which is the second to last show I did with that coach, I looked at my stage shots and not one of them was I smiling. I was like half smiling. Like I could not smile physically. I could not bring myself to smile. And so that was what really taught me that I was like, I knew already I needed to change, and I needed to change my environment, people I was around, everything, but I didn't really know and see it until then. So for me, it's observation. That is the mental health practice that helped me the most and continues to help me, is observation of like what works, what doesn't work, how do I move on from there? Because I'm not going to just do something that I clearly see doesn't work. I'm going to see what doesn't work and then improve from there. So, and it's about employing the right people in your life, not just like a coach who knows what they're doing better, but it's also about having the people in your life that support you and that love you and that want to see your growth. Because a lot of the times, some people will keep someone in their life, whether it's a friend or a partner or a coach, and those people are not for them. They don't actually want you to win. And I've experienced this a lot. Sometimes it's malicious and they really like are kind of like jealous or envious of you. And then sometimes it's subconscious, or it's just a misalignment because you're moving in one direction and the friend or partner or whoever is moving in an opposite direction. And your directions don't go together anymore. And that's why you need to change who you're around and the environment that you're in. So it's really, for me, and what I think a lot more people need to do more of is just really sitting back, looking at their environment, looking at their choices, looking in the mirror, basically, and seeing like, what am I doing? Who am I doing it with? How do I feel after being with this person? How do I feel after that loss? And do I want to feel that again? If I don't, I have to change something, and I have to be aware enough of like the thing that I really need to change. And if I don't know, I have to ask someone who I can trust is going to give me a solid answer. So that is like more big picture in terms of like helping turning setbacks into fuel for my workouts. Like honestly, if I'm training legs, I'm thinking about being in the second call outs and I don't want to be there. So, and then I also will look at the opposite, like the more positive. Like I'm thinking like I'm going to be a fucking Olympian if I do this right. I'm going to make it to the Olympia if I just finish this set strong, if I just do this weight, and if I hold that tempo, and if I eat that meal, and if I go the extra mile, like I am going to make it there. But I have to do it every day, and I have to think about that all the time, and I have to think about how much it hurts to do the opposite. And that's what keeps me going. That's my fuel, and that's how I try to look at my athletes. If they ever make mistakes or if they have setbacks that they can't get over, I just look at like, what are you doing that's not working? Look at that first, and then let's change it. Okay, so you enter the locker room, and the pump is otherworldly. Unfortunately, there's someone hogging the mirror, flexing like it's their personal selfie studio. How do you politely nudge them to share the space? Also, what's the goofiest locker room faux pas you've witnessed? If I want to capture my pump in the mirror and someone's in the way, I'm just not gonna bother. I'm just gonna let them do their thing. But most of the time, if you enter a locker room and someone is taking a picture of themselves, especially a female locker room, like if they're doing that, they stop as soon as you walk in because they're a little embarrassed. So like that's what usually happens. I've almost never seen that not happen. But like goofiest locker room faux pas, honestly, is just like when people like spend a lot of time there for no reason. Like when I used to be in gym management, there was like a woman that would just come to the gym to walk around the locker room naked and do a face mask and sit in the sauna, and then she would leave. So that's pretty weird, but to each their own. All right. Let's see. I think I had that was all my questions. So I really appreciate everyone's questions, and I appreciate everyone listening to this. The next things coming up for the Refined Strength podcast, I have some other guests that I'm working on bringing on as competition season really heats up for pros especially. It is difficult to get people on a schedule, but that's okay. I'm going to keep following up and keep getting cool people on the podcast. So, and then I will also continue doing squadcasts with my ladies, Jess and Daraja. So yeah, thank you guys for listening and being a part of the journey. I appreciate it. And if you ever need to give me feedback, I'm always open to it on YouTube or on my Instagram. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to us, or follow us on Spotify. And if you love it, or if you love me, then please write a review for the podcast, because I would really appreciate it. That gets it pushed out to more people, and that obviously helps more people. And that's my main goal, is to make bodybuilding a better place.